The entire essence of Christianity has to do with the spirit realm. Do you know anything about God? Is it possible to know anything about God without an understanding of the spirit realm? And the answer to that is no. We have to break out of this limited, darkened terrestrial existence. And there are all kinds of spiritual beings. C.S. Lewis went through the wardrobe into another dimension. And he thought, if I tell people, they'll lock me up in a mental asylum. Halloween, the actual contraction is Hallow Samhain. Worship the Dread Lord of Death. That's the name of the holiday. October 31st is the high day of black magic worldwide.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Holy Living Podcast. We have here Pastor Dave Bryan from the Church of Glad Tidings in Yuba City, California. And Pastor Dave, you have a lot of amazing stories, actually. And I know you've been on several podcasts and shared some of your testimony, especially dealing with Anton LaVey. What we'd like to do here is to dig more into just some of your wisdom on some of these topics related to spiritual warfare and holiness and some other things. Why don't you tell us a little bit, what do Christians need to know about the spiritual realm?
Okay. That's a big question, my friend. So the entire essence of Christianity has to do with the spirit realm. We are born again into a living, vibrant relationship with the essence, the hub, the great power of the spirit realm, because God is spirit. So maybe a contrasting way to approach this is, do you know anything about God? Is it possible to know anything about God without an understanding of the spirit realm? And the answer to that is no. What you can know about is history. You can know about the history of Christ having come. You can know about the history of the Jews and all that happened. But honestly, our entire existence as sons of God is that we are born again into a vibrant relationship in the spirit realm, while we at the same time are custodians of a meat sack. Our physical body is just, if you've ever had an out-of-body experience, I wish everybody would, because you look at your body and think, wow, really? I mean, my mind, my emotions, my affection, everything is right here with me in my eternal being, which is the spirit soul, right? And then, the effect it had on me is, golly, why do I focus so much on that meat sack when this is life and eternity, right? And so there's a biblical term, Gabriel, that represents someone who is under par in their spiritual capacities and their spiritual experience. And that word is carnal. And it's throughout the New Testament. Paul says, why are you still behaving as a carnal man? Carnal, of course, it comes from a Greek word carne, which, it comes through the Spanish. Carne asada,
Right.
it's meat. Right?
Right.
So anyway, carnal has to do with the meat sack. It has to do with the physical covering that our spirit soul lives in. And I'll just say this. I mean, there's a lot of things that are might be right, might be wrong, but they really don't impact our eternal destiny. But I believe when God gave Adam and Eve coats of skin, it was talking about this, not a cape of some kind. And so their entire existence went from a spiritual essence, where of course they would have had cerebral uh, cer- I almost said cerebral brain bodies, but celestial bodies. They were created with celestial bodies. And those celestial bodies are, that's what the angelic hosts still have. They're very significant, and they parallel our physical bodies almost identically, to the point that the fallen ones were able to procreate with human women. But the point is, they were given terrestrial bodies at the fall, and then our whole lives became about food and clothing, and taking care of our our terrestrial bodies. But our essence is still eternal, and that means spiritual. At some point in the future, the terrestrial body will put on a new dimension, be completely transformed to a celestial body. And of course, the Bible talks about us being changed in twinkling of an eye and all that kind of stuff. So we're looking forward to the celestial bodies. In the meantime, if you see an angel, that's what they have. Angels don't appear as specters. Like you don't just get the sense that there's, smoke in the room. They show up in bodies. And by the way, most often in the Bible, they are called men.
Mhm.
People see them and just say three
Right.
men came, and they want to have hamburgers with you, right?
Right.
And
Very rare.
then they talk about heavenly things, and then they eat their burgers and step into the fire and disappear. Like those weren't
Our
normal men,
judges. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But they do have celestial bodies, and they're, of course, they exceed our terrestrial bodies in every way, the celestial.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a roundabout way of saying that when we're born again, we should begin to experience and understand and learn about the spirit realm. And it's all around us. It's way more pervasive than the physical realm. And let me just say this to your listeners, that they're still trying to sort this out. But today, the top biologists estimate that there are between 4 and 50 billion species in the terrestrial realm.
Mhm.
Species are not things; they're kinds of things, unique
Right.
kinds of things. So, if there are 50 billion unique kinds of things in this realm that God created for a relatively short time, um, and most people think the celestial, the I should say, the week of redemption is 7,000 years. A day is 1,000 years. But anyway, however long that is, it's a blink compared to eternity.
Mhm.
So that causes minds like mine to think, I wonder how many different kinds of things the Creator has made in the eternal realm.
Yeah.
And so we need to learn to interface with them. Let me just say this, and again, if this blows your listeners' minds, sorry, not sorry,
Yeah.
but the point
Go for it.
is, we have to break out of this limited, darkened terrestrial existence, and there are all kinds of spiritual beings. I've studied this a lot, of course, because of getting into it 30 years ago with the Church of Satan, and I was from a ranch in Idaho. I didn't know anything about this except I knew some Bible stories.
Right.
But since then, you can only imagine what I've uh, discovered personally and been exposed to through exorcisms in many nations and whatnot. But I'm convinced that all of the mythos of the ancients are based on fact, meaning there are dwarf type creatures, and there are sprites, and there are ogres, and let me tell you this. I don't know if either of you read two of the greatest revelators of the modern age, but one was C.S. Lewis,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
um, and then J.R.R. Tolkien. They were friends. They were in the London Writers Guild together.
Uh-huh.
And if you read their writings, both of them, their writings were based on personal experiences.
What
Wow.
C.S. Lewis went through the wardrobe into another dimension.
Wow.
And he thought, if I tell people, they'll lock me up in a mental asylum. So
yeah.
I'll just write this fantastic book, which everybody reads. And the reason they read it, guys, is our spirit responds to that. Like, that's awesome,
Yeah.
right? Instead of that's stupid.
Yeah.
We feel like that's awesome
Yeah.
because it has the ring of eternal truth in it.
Uh-huh.
And the whole deal about Middle Earth and everything, J.R.R. Tolkien, he had experiences and saw all kinds of different creatures, and so they, if you read their autobiographies, and sometimes in biographies, but they say, "Isn't it sad that organized Christianity is less open to truth than it is to fantasy?" Because as long as you say it's fantastical fiction, it's like everybody should read this book.
Right.
And usually they'll say something like it, if you read it carefully, it has some spiritual truths in it. Duh. It was their testimonies, it's things they saw and experienced. So anyway, the spirit realm is pervasive. It's everywhere. By the way, the rest of the world already knows this. It's the West, because of what we call the Great Enlightenment, that pushed away from spiritual reality, and it's been really sad. And let me say this too, because you're both spirit-filled Christians, but
Mhm.
the revival of spirituality sadly did not come through the church. It came through the New Age. And people that had rejected the church because of a lack of spirituality, and I mean real spirituality, real experiences, not just singing a song about,
Mhm.
Jesus defeated his enemies in the Red Sea, but real, there was so little real experience that they went out and they began to hobnob with the powers of the inner earth and of the second heaven, and they're powerful beings. And so then, of course, they're also malevolent beings. So a lot of them started out with a honeymoon experience and thinking things like this works. They'll talk to us. We can talk back. We can conjure them and get them to do things. But the further down the rabbit hole you go, the darker it gets.
Right.
And eventually you find out that all of the fallen ones are evil. If
Mhm.
they ever do you any perceived favor, it is not a favor. It is simply a way of gaining power over you. So if you have any listeners, there's a book that really spells that out. Well, there are a number of them, but um, a lady in our church just wrote one. She just came in out of the New Age in Grass Valley,
Mhm.
and she wrote a book called God Without Limits. It's really excellent. But years ago, there was a gal that was deeply entrenched in New Age, and she wrote a book called "The Beautiful Side of Evil," about how that whole realm seduces people until they have them in
Uh-huh.
chains, and that's a good book as well. But yeah, it's everywhere. That's our task when we've been born again, to, as Paul said, quit acting carnally. That's just the interface with your carne, your
Uh-huh.
body, with the things around you, and begin to learn about the spirit realm.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. A couple of follow-up questions for you on that. What you mentioned about Lewis and Tolkien, I had never heard, because I remember you said something similar to that in the Isaiah 61 conference that you sent us the videos for, about them being seers and about them mentioning some of their experiences in their writings. And I've read about, well, as far as Tolkien, I've read obviously Lord of the Rings and like the Silmarillion. I haven't read any other like biography. For Lewis, I've read his Chronicles of Narnia and some other things. And I know that they're both, as scholars and literary people, they really loved the mythos of especially the Norse, the Greek and the Norse myths.
Yeah.
What were you mentioned that their autobiographies? Were there any other works where they specifically mentioned some of those
Well, of
spirits?
course, both of those were such literary giants that there are entire schools of thought and universities that are like a Tolkien scholar.
Uh-huh.
And I've listened to a lot of their talks and videos because they were forerunners in
Mhm.
building a bridge between the realm of Carne and
Uh-huh.
the spirit realm. So, in terms of a particular book with a particular name, I can't give you that. But
Okay.
the deeper you go, the more you'll find people that talk about their spiritual experiences
Okay.
and the fact that both of those men were chagrined that they couldn't be honest with the Church of England about
Uh-huh.
those experiences
Gotcha.
because the church was so carnal,
Right.
Yeah.
extremely carnal. The church in America is extremely carnal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how, next follow-up question then, how do we begin to really grow in that awareness of the spiritual? I mean, obviously, I could say obviously through prayer and reading the word and everything, but that could almost be a cliche answer for some
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
So, but like practically in your experience and well, that's what practically means in practice. How do we begin to actually be more aware? How, I mean, it seems to be being led by the Spirit, but like, what has that journey been like for you?
Well, it is led by the Spirit. The journey for me was I was not content to uh, to live a life with a huge gap between what I said I believed and what I experienced. And so I thought, man, we said in these church. My dad was a Assembly of God pastor and a church planner, and a good man, loved the Lord. My mother's still alive, best Christian I know. But but the point is, the way my mind worked is like we keep singing songs about Jesus being our healer, and no one's getting healed. What's up with that? And so suffice it to say that I think that the first step is discontent with the status quo. As long as you're okay with the doctrines of non-rockabotus, which is like, well, don't ask that, Krista. Don't ask that, Gabriel. Just you need to be trusting. I've heard that so many times from spiritual leaders.
Uh-huh.
Well, your job is to just have faith. Well, faith attaches to a substance. That's what Hebrews says. Faith is the substance of things hoped for.
Mhm.
And so faith is not an airy fairy deal. Faith is actually being able to see beyond the veil into the eternal realm and fasten onto something that is already there and draw it into manifestation in this realm.
Hmm.
So I don't think the West knows diddly squat about faith. I mean, there are a few people that do, but basically that's why I call it the Great American Religious Enterprise. It's basically a business that, yeah, that's why in COVID they wouldn't they went along to get along because they had to keep the business from going bankrupt, right? So they tried to get people to embrace the lie and to send them tithes monies, and the offering. No one was, no one had the courage to say this is political BS, is what it is, and we're not going to do it,
Uh-huh.
because it's a business, and they were all hedging their bets. I got calls from scores of pastors. What if you get arrested? What if I might? I'm still doing the right thing.
Mhm.
What if, all these kind of things. And that's just a problem in the great American religious enterprise is we don't have the courage to ask questions and take risks and say, as for me and my house, right? That's what
We'll
Joshua
serve the
said. As
Lord,
for
yeah.
me, we don't have the courage to do that. So it's just same old, same old, same old, same old, same old, same old. And as we say around here, same old, get you same old.
Yeah,
Nothing's going to change, right? And
exactly.
so another thing I did, I went to Portland Bible College, and I'm glad I did and all, but uh, I was in this quest of closing the gap between what I and others around me said they believed and what was real.
Mhm.
And so I took church history, and it was one of the most boring classes I've ever taken. About, oh, then this council, this synod, this, I like, oh, please, whatever happened to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But anyway, uh, at the end of that class, the instructor, Bill Schuyler, said, David, uh, you act like you didn't enjoy the class. I said, well, that's because I didn't, Bill. It was a very boring class. And he said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I said, Bill, why wouldn't anyone feel that way? Well, we talked for an entire 6 weeks, and no one brought up a miracle. And he said, well, church went through the dark ages, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I used to think that the greatest argument for the existence of God was the universe. Now I think it's the existence of the Christian church. Only God could keep this sucker alive for 2,000 years with nobody seeing a miracle, right? And I'm not trying to discount salvation, which is an amazing miracle, but that is not what Jesus was talking about when he said, "Greater signs than this will you
Right.
see and do." So anyway, this Bible college teacher said, well, you might want to explore the writings of the mystics. Now, I graduated as the president of Portland Bible College. I got straight A's. My dad was a church planner for the AG. I had never even heard of the mystics. And if I had heard of them, somebody would be telling me, you don't want to mess with them because they might
Right.
be
That's
witches,
kooky,
right?
right?
And kooky, yeah.
Too
Yeah.
woo.
So I asked him about it, and he said, "This is a Bible college professor." This was his explanation. He said there are four popular myths of mystic writing. One is that they were insane; they were totally insane, and just because they were insane, they couldn't. There was no lines between fact and fiction, and they just said all kinds of bizarre things. He said number two, they were charlatans, and they weren't insane at all. They were very clever, and they had learned how to use the magnanimous to get money and fame. He said the third view, which is held by a lot of the church, is that they had demonic power. And so they did do supernatural things, but not through the power of God. And he said there are a few people that think they were spirit filled Christians who were living in the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, anyway,
That's
long story,
the
long
Bible.
story to try to answer your question. But what happened, Gabriel, is that carnal historians, church historians, edited out of history every supernatural thing that happened because they were carnal and they didn't believe in the supernatural.
Hmm.
And so every time if they had edited the Bible, there wouldn't be a single miracle in the life of Christ. They would have said he was a nice guy and he helped people. He was pretty darn good carpenter. There wouldn't be a single miracle if they had edited it because they don't believe in miracles. But they edited it like Schaeff's church history. There are no miracles in that. It's just all these big, long, boring things where people were arguing over doctrine. And this is my contention that some of the greatest miracle workers, you couldn't even get them to talk about most doctrine. Just keep your eyes on Jesus, love Jesus, yield to the Holy Spirit. I mean, they weren't talking about eschatology and all the other things that people get sidetracked on. I don't mean to belittle them, but no one ever got closer to God studying the bells and smells and incense and nonsense of the Judean way. That's not what brings you close to God. I mean, if you are close to God, then you can find truth in all that stuff.
Mhm.
But you can be you can have a doctorate in theology and be a million miles from Christ, from the Christa anointing.
Yeah.
Right? You can
No,
be a
that's true.
long way away from it. And so, anyway, what would help me is intellectual honesty. And there's not that much of it in the church, but there needs to be more. And it's okay to say, I don't know about that, but I'm stretching in that direction. I'd love to find out.
Right.
Um, so, intellectual honesty that will not let you rest in the status quo. Just, ho hum, this is as good as it gets. That has helped. And then reading the lives, and not just reading, but I don't know if either of you know David Hogan. He's a missionary
Yeah.
in Mexico.
Yeah.
Well,
Sure.
I was on this quest years ago as a young man, and I saw a video he did, Faith to Raise the Dead. I
Uh-huh.
happened to know where he spoke that, and I called and I said, does anyone have his contact information? Oh, all the stuff. Can't give it to you. Can't. I kept on until some guy said, I'll give you his cell phone, but you need to know the man's crazy. He's bona fide insane. And so I said, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I got his number and I called him and I found out he had just been in Portland and he had told the guy who gave me his phone number that he was headed to San Diego. Well, if you were making that run down Central California, you drive within 200 feet of my office. Our church is right on the 99.
Right.
And so I asked, oh, when did he leave? He had been to Eugene. I called the pastor. When did he leave? I got a beat on exactly where that dude was and who he was traveling with. And so I called him on his cell phone.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you met him. He's a
I was at
soldier.
him.
He's a gruff guy.
Yeah. We've seen some
He
of his
said,
videos and
He was
testimonies.
at church once.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He said, who is this? I said, it's Pastor Dave Bryan. How'd you get my cell phone? I said, well, I just kept on asking until I got it. He said, well, why'd you call me? I said, I want you to come to our church. He says, not going to happen. He didn't even ask about my church. Just said, not going to happen. And I said, well, then I want to have coffee with you. Not going to happen. He said, are you stalking me? And I said, yep. He said, I don't appreciate people stalking me. I said, well, let me tell you how much I'm stalking you. I know that you're in two Ford 350 diesels. You and your wife Debbie are in one, and your son Jody and his wife Cindy are in the other, and Cindy has a baby. And I know that
Not
you're
creepy at
coming
all.
down the 99 on the way to Sacramento. He said, you are stalking me. I said, I just told you I was stalking you. And I said, here's the bad news, dude. I'm going to keep stalking you until I get a chance to talk to you. He said, I don't have to talk to you if I don't want to. I said, no, but at some point you're going to want to because I'm going to keep after you. And I said, here's the deal. You're you're traveling with two women. One of them has a little baby. And unlike you and Jody, they are not going to want to drive straight through from Eugene, Oregon to San Diego. And I said, you will be coming within a few feet of our church. And he said, I'm not going to talk to you. I said, okay, but here's the deal. There's a motel right here in Yuba City, and I'll buy you your rooms, buy you dinner, buy you breakfast, and all I want is a half hour to talk to you. He said, how many rooms? I said, I will buy you as many rooms as you need. He said, well, I think two will do. I said, all right. He said, you won't bother us during dinner? I said, I won't bother you at all. I want a half hour to talk to you about some of your stories. He said, okay. He said, you check us in, send me the information. And he said, the next morning, tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, be in the lobby. And he said, don't be late. So next morning at 6 o'clock, I told my wife Cheryl, I said he's going to be packed up in his Dodges, watching his watch, and if when it hits 6, he's going to drive out the driveway and say you were late. So I got there at a quarter till. He's sitting in the driveway with the engine running, watching his watch. I knocked on the window. I said, "Hello, David." I said, "Sad for you, I'm on time." And he said, "Okay." He says, "You got a half hour. Let's go in for coffee." So anyway, during that time, God just knit our hearts, and He asked me to come down and see what He was doing, and we became fast friends. And but I bring that up because I know most people would not have done what I did. I
Right.
just thought if there is a man who's raised the dead, by gosh and by golly, I'm going to talk to him about it, whatever that takes. And so I just kept pressing in. And I remember he said, "How come you want to talk to me so bad?" I said, "I want to know about raising the dead." He said, "Listen to my videos. I already did videos in Florida." I said, "Yeah, I listened to them, but," I said, "I got other questions." He said, "What, like what?" I said, "Do you have people that transmogrify down there?" He said, "No." I said, "You sure about that?" He said, "Well, how would I know? I don't even know what that word means." I said, "Do you have shapeshifters?" He said, "Oh, like guys who turn into pigs and stuff." And I said, "I actually hadn't heard of a pig, but
I
like a
have.
werewolf and yeah, I have too since then, but at the time I'd never heard of a weir pig, you know."
Yeah. You
But
answered
anyway,
the first day. That was your
yeah,
first question.
yeah. So anyway, he said, "You don't sound like no California pastor to me." And I told him about Anton LaVey, and we were best bud. He called me little brother. He's going with me. He's coming here in December, and then we're going to
Oh,
India together. But
cool.
anyway, if you hang around powerless people your whole life, you will be powerless. And so you have to have something in you that is not content for same old, same old. And it's not a comfortable place to be. And it's hard to keep your attitude right, honestly, because you get the feeling like, why don't you guys pull your head out of the sand and, and recognize you're in a big, empty, stupid system, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, you have to really pray through and say, "God, help me to love people." I have an older brother that pastors a church in Idaho, and he started calling me a conspiracy theorist and didn't want to hear. I got kicked out of his denomination for casting demons out of people. So
Oh,
anyway, um, and he was giving me a hard time. One time I hung up the phone, and I was angry. I thought, "How dare you, dude? We grew up together on a ranch. You know I'm telling the truth." And the Holy Spirit just said, "Don't resent your brother for being today where you were just yesterday."
mm,
I thought, wow, yeah,
yeah.
no kidding.
Yeah.
Because I really had a struggle with doubt and unbelief, as I waded through all this.
Yeah.
But, God knows our hearts. If that's why having a desire for truth is really important. And then if you will, if you will go to meet people, I've met people all over the world. I flew all the way to Argentina to meet Carlos Anacondia
Mm,
because I thought if there are men like that alive today, I want to know them. I want them to pray for me. And I've had, and my wife has too. My wife has more than me. She'll fly anywhere in the world just to touch somebody and say, "Please pray for me." I don't know if you know this. My wife's grandfather was A. Allen. He was
yeah.
a
Yeah. I
healing
remember.
evangelist, and so, and she has a desire for that. But I've read all the mystic books, and some people. My dad used to say, "Eat the fruit and spit out the seed," but some people say, "Oh, I've checked into uh, y- the author, and he is not a good person." uh, to me, that is a stupid thing. It's like if you read a history book, if the history's good, you don't throw it away because the guy's son hated him. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, stuff happens, but the book is good. And the reason I bring that up is some of the the modern mystics book and some of those books. There's another one called The Ecstasy of Loving God. And I know all about the author's good times and bad times. So what? It's a really good book. And I guess my point in that, guys, is if you want to, you can find a way to discount everything. You know, why listen to Mary Magdalene? She was a hooker for years, right? I mean, you can discount everybody if you want to. Or you can say, hey, God's a redeemer, the treasure of God, he puts in earthen vessels, and people don't have to be perfect for me to learn something from them. So there's a book called 400 Saints That Raised the Dead. I've
Hmm.
read that book. Are there things in it that just cause you to go, whoa, could that have actually happened? Yeah, there are. But I've also read all the details of how the Catholics uh, they had a whole procedure to declaring something that was miraculous,
Yeah. Still
and
do.
it is very robust.
Hmm.
It's like goes far beyond the charismatics,
Yeah.
and so I just thought, wow, to get this miracle into this book, there had to be multiple witnesses, physical witnesses to the event. There
Uh-huh.
had to be multiple character witnesses. It goes way beyond what happens today in a court of law and so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, there were a whole bunch of people that believe this. That's the same criterion we put on the ascension of Christ, his resurrection. There were
Yeah.
500 people that saw him,
Yeah.
and they left, and they probably a bunch of them were losers, right? I mean, where do you get a group of 500 red hot, rock solid disciples? And besides that, 380 had headed for the mall by the time Pentecost happened, right? There were only 120 of them that even had the moxie to obey the direct command of Jesus to tarry in Jerusalem till it happened.
Uh,
So my point is there were 500 peeps, some of them good, some of them bad, some of them responsible, some of them irresponsible, but they all said, we saw him ascend from this mountain into the heavens. So, so I've sorted through all this stuff, and I've read the testimonies, and I remember for me, Gabriel, I had to make this decision, and I made it for life.
uh-huh.
Uh, we get to posture ourselves as essentially skeptics or believers.
Yeah.
We get to choose that.
Yeah.
And so instead of believing something is wrong until somebody proves it to me, I'm going to believe something is right until somebody proves to me that it isn't.
Hmm.
And so those kind of things have really shaped my life. And by the way, for years I fought against doubt and unbelief because of the way had grown
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But God will help you in those things. So those
Yeah.
are a few things that have really changed my life.
I appreciate that.
I
You know,
do,
it's would you
do
like
you,
to-
I had a question follow up.
Yeah.
Well,
I want-
before you ask that question, actually, I
Okay.
just want to just to kind of reflect on what you said. I do understand because I know that I actually grew up in a charismatic, like Pentecostal type of church. Actually, the church, I think it was part of the Assemblies of God, and then became independent.
Yeah.
I grew up around speaking in tongues and prophecy and some miracles, but even so, when growing up around that, when I was in my first, I went to Oral Roberts University for my
Okay.
undergrad.
Yeah.
And my roommate, who went to Raymond Bible College, he started telling me about modern miracles, like beyond what I'd ever seen. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
That broke my brain a little bit. And then years later, I was introduced to Bethel and Redding, California, and hearing some of the miracles going on there. That broke my brain some more. And then while we were there during 2020, I started listening to um, this podcast called Blurry Creatures, which actually is how I found out about your interview there. And they're telling
Yeah.
the stuff about cryptid, like strange creatures, UFOs, and just weird stuff.
Yeah.
that I always dismissed as like, okay, it's either it's demons or it's just some, I don't know what they're smoking. But there's just so much of it that again, it was just breaking my paradigm.
Yeah.
And then I listened to your
Which is
interview.
exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah. And I read the
All
book that you
Western
read.
paradigms need broken. Yeah.
He came to set the captives free. And actually that one that broke my paradigm a little bit, but I'd already been listening to so much other stuff that it really actually
Yeah.
brought some stuff together for me. I was like, I knew it. It's real. What is this?
Yeah.
Craziness. But I just I then listened to Dan Duval, which I know you've interviews with Dan Duval as well. It's
Yeah.
just like the
He's a
deeper I
friend.
go, like you said, the deeper the rabbit hole goes, but in this case, got a good way. Um, and it's just the more freedom it's been breaking my unbelief and my doubt down
Yep.
kind of layer by layer.
Right.
Um, and it kind of restores the wonder that I always wanted because the modern world seems so boring to me in so many ways.
Yeah.
And yet,
Good. That's a good thing,
yeah.
Gabriel. You
And
were
so,
designed by God to be bored by the rational and mundane.
yeah. And so when you sharing what you did about Tolkien and Lewis, I love Tolkien and Lewis. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I but never realized like they might have actually had some real experiences that what I thought was like they're getting downloads, don't even know it, what's going on. But anyway, you said you had a follow up. I don't want to take all the time.
Also, C.S. Lewis wrote Pearlandra, which honestly I
The
thought was
science fiction.
even more interesting. Pearlandra and Out of the Silent Planet, and the other name was The Hideous Planet,
No, it was That Hideous Strength.
or The Hideous
That was the
Strength,
third
which
one,
I thought
yeah.
was interesting. But I did want to ask you a question up on two things you said. You said about faith and how you can pull it in, and actually just the
Yeah.
other day, I really liked how you explained that. But also I had something that happened, and when it was explaining it to Gabriel, I was as if I feel like when it happens, it's like you're getting stuck to the pan. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there's nowhere to move. Like I won't, like when you get something the bottom of your pan, it's like just adhering to it. And I really liked how you explained that,
Good.
because sometimes it feels like you don't know when that's going to happen, like how to actually make your heart and the truth come together like that. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you could.
Well, we walk by faith, and it is a journey, and you learn as you go. But the Hebrews 11, if you'll read the whole thing and embrace it, will help you, because people lived in faith and died in faith, not having received the promise, and they were all rewarded the same. So the point is, to me, the point is, get a hold of faith and hang on to it. Live or die, you'll get the overcomer's reward. And we don't always know. I don't think a bunch of those people actually knew. I don't think Isaiah knew that, I'll write the prophetic book of salvation and then get sawn in half by the most evil king that ever ruled in Israel. I don't think he knew that.
Yeah.
But it happened. And I think while he heard the saw blade approaching, he was probably praying, God, this would be a good time for one of those miracles, right? But anyway, that's why, okay, so problems in the church are not hard to find. The great American religious enterprise is really done much more to misrepresent Christ than to represent him. But anyway, there's a lack of faith. And of course, in the Bible, a synonym for faith is courage. Some people don't realize that. But the word faith is only used twice in the entire Old Testament. And we know it's important. It's not used more simply because the New Testament tells us that faith without works is not faith, right? And so in the Old Testament, instead of saying have faith in God, it says be strong and very courageous because you know God is with you, right?
Yeah.
Act on faith. And so I bring that up because the church in the West is not courageous. It's a pathetic weakling church. And again, I'm not trying to be mean spirited to the church, but we do have to be honest. The church in Iran is much stronger than the church in America. The church in China is much stronger. The church in so many nations where they have to live lives of faith. And so I hope I don't get out in a dangerous place, but somebody has to say, we've got to wake up and smell the coffee. Well, just because we got the coolest worship bands in the world does not mean we're living in authentic Christianity. And so we need to have, there's what I call the short list of a true disciple, and it's in red. It's given by Jesus. Go everywhere. Most Christians have never even gone across the street to share the gospel. It says go everywhere. Share the gospel of the kingdom, which that's not popular either. It's always the gospel of the church, which is never mentioned in the Bible. It's the gospel of the kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is now available in the realm of man. That's the gospel. And with it comes righteousness, peace, joy, the power of the Holy Spirit. But go everywhere, share the gospel of the kingdom, and then heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. Everybody who says they're a believer are somewhere on that list. Maybe they're waiting to have the courage to cross the street and share the gospel. Maybe they're trying to sort out between the church and the kingdom. Maybe they're trying to get faith to pray for the sick. Maybe they're trying to get up the courage to come to the Isaiah 61 seminar, learn how to cast out demons.
Yeah.
And maybe they're to the point of saying, I'm going to trust God to raise the dead. That's where I am. And I've talked to David about it. I've been with David praying for the dead to be raised. But he's raised over 40 people from the dead. And his Indian pastors, they're that network, they've raised over 400 people from the dead. In fact, you can't be an overseer of a church network without having a verifiable resurrection. And so, again, there's no shame in not being, through the whole list, but there is shame on not trying.
Mhm.
That's what Jesus told us to do. Go, preach the gospel of the kingdom, heal the sick, cast out demons, raise the dead. Yeah, we should all be trying to do those things.
Yeah.
And God will help us.
That was really
That's
good.
good.
Someday I'll be back on your broadcast talking about raising the dead. So far, I'm 0
great.
for 6. Prayed for 6 dead people. They just got deader by the minute.
Oh,
Stayed dead. So what? I remember when there was a time I'd never cast a demon out. There was a time where I had never prayed for somebody to be healed.
yeah.
So you'll be watching for it. One of these days we'll be talking
We
about
will
raising the dead.
definitely, you can come here first. You're like, guys, I did it.
Yeah.
Well, Pastor Deb, I know we're coming close to our time here. I did want to ask you if you have a few more minutes. Yeah, I don't know how much time you have, but
Yeah, no, I this is my podcast afternoon, so I'm not, I don't have another appointment very soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you about, is you some particular, okay. Talking about casting out demons. Because that from what I understand, that's definitely been your area of expertise as far as your ministry.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of deliverance and healing ministry.
Yeah.
Um, as I've worked as a counselor for several years, and
Yeah.
I've found a lot with pretty much everybody that I've worked with. So often it comes back to a spiritual root issue, whether it's like the person's, the problem that they're dealing with is a result of their own, sin or that of somebody sitting against them and them being hurt through it, or even demonic like bondage and strongholds. We can't. I don't see a way to deal with problems or wounds of the soul without dealing with the spiritual issues. And I'm wondering from your experience, like what in the deliverance ministry that you've done, what kind of ways have you seen demons afflict people in their mental health, and with that, like what kind of transformations or
Yeah,
healing have you seen?
because some people even say it's like they need, like the person needs to know all kinds of stuff before they can even attempt to deal with those things. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
faith.
So here's my bottom line. And I'm not, again, I'm not trying to poo-poo any
Yeah.
other person's way of doing things. I'm just telling you that I think that Jesus is our example and the Bible is our handbook.
Mhm.
So I do not think there is ever a need to know things that aren't uh, available in those two sources. So the Bible, we should study to show ourselves approved.
Mhm.
And we know that the Gadarene demoniac had at least 2,000 demons because he had a legion, and that's between 2 and 10,000
Mhm.
in Roman times. So Jesus left us what we needed to know in that story, and what we needed to know in that story. And it's a great story about the white throne judgment, the end of the age, and the license demons have to torment people until then. There's so much to be learned from that.
Mhm.
But what we didn't have is Jesus saying, "Oh, tell me about when you were a baby. What happened between you and your mama?" He just cast the demons out. Now, again, I'm not saying that that can't be helpful, and I can tell you stories where it was. All I'm saying is that for me, I just say, well, we know it's in the Bible, and we have the Spirit of God. So we've prayed this many times. I'll tell you a story if you want to, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
prayed
Please do.
many times and just said, Holy Spirit, you know the things that are hidden in the darkness, and the darkness and the light are the same to you.
Mhm.
If there is something we need to know,
Mhm.
then show us. And if there's not, we're going to cast this demon out. Right?
Yeah.
We cast all kinds of things out of Deborah, not knowing, you know, a lot of stuff. But every once in a while, God would show us something. So we were, we were, you know, who I'm talking about, DJ,
Yeah. Yeah.
formerly
Definitely.
Ray LeVay. So we were fasting and praying, and that there was a group of demons, and they called themselves something like the company. We are the company, or uh, something like that. But anyway, uh, we would we were trying to get a handle on what was going on. We found out there were seven of them. We are the seven. We are the company. You will never get us out. We know things you don't know, whatever. So we're praying, Lord, help us. And if there's something we need to know that empowers them, please bring it to our minds. So, um, so DJ, she came out of one of these prayer times, and she said, every time those spirits speak, my right hand begins to hurt really bad. And I said, really? And I said, you know why? She said, no, but I have scars on my right hand. She said, I'm thinking maybe they put an internal fetish into my right hand that is empowering them, because a fetish, you know, fetishes are so powerful that when Achan brought one back from Jericho, the entire nation of Israel was cursed because he had a fetish hidden under his tent. They're really powerful.
Mhm.
And by the way, in that story, the Battle of Ai, God said, you will never be successful again until you find the accursed object and get it out of the camp. That's a heck of a statement.
Question: why the treasure that Achan stole from Jericho? Why do you define it as why was that a fetish? Just because it was a cursed object, or?
Well, yeah, it's a cursed object. If you, okay, so the conquering of Canaan,
Mhm.
there are only two categories. There are regular sinful people, which were always treated benevolently. I mean, they were conquered, yeah, but the wives weren't killed, the kids weren't killed, the cattle wasn't killed. Uh, and if they surrendered, they were just absorbed into Israel. But the Nephilim tribes, they killed everything that breathed.
Hmm.
Jericho was a Nephilim stronghold. That means it was an occult city. And he said before they went in, remember, don't remove anything from the city, burn it all. Now, what it said is that he had silver, and that's used in occult practices, first of all, prophetically for the betrayal of the Christ through Judas,
Right.
30 pieces of silver. And of course, after the fact, it's not prophetic anymore. It's just the symbol of betrayal of God. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, so it was silver and a Babylonish cloak.
Oh.
Well, Babylon was the world center of witchcraft and occult.
Oh.
So, anyways, no, there's in my mind, there's no doubt he had cursed silver and he had a warlock's robe.
Huh.
Interesting.
But anyway, you know what happened? God said,
Uh-huh.
you don't go to war. You will never win again unless you find the accursed things and remove them from the camp. We're just getting ready. Every October we do a holy Holocaust, and we
Right.
just say, hey, uh, fetishes are things that have been wholly dedicated to Satan.
Okay.
Fetishes don't get saved, redeemed. They have to be destroyed. And so if you have fetishes in your house, you can pray till the cows come home. But what you need to do is remove the accursed thing from your house. That's God's prescription for it. I
Yeah.
was just praying for a girl in Southern Cal, and this friend said, "Oh, can you help my friend's girlfriend? She's really going comatose, and it was obviously demonic. But anyway, when I went over there, the whole house was full of fetishes,
Oh.
Hmm.
and I told the boyfriend, I said, uh, "Do you believe in God?" He said, "Yeah, I believe there's a God." I said, "Well, here's the deal. Your girlfriend, this is not a biological issue. Your girlfriend is being systematically destroyed by demonic forces, and she will die if you don't clean this house out." He said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, what do I mean? You have all kinds of extremely evil things. You have evil paintings. You have pornography. You have a glove worn by an SS commander who is torturing Jews. Those are not good things to have in your house. And, I mean, I could go on and on. It was a long
Right.
list of things. And he said, "Oh, man, I'm a collector." I said, "Well, you're going to be a collector with a dead girlfriend."
Uh,
And I said, it's up to you. I'm going to go home to Yuba City tonight. I'm going to be fine. But I'm just telling you, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So if you want to do it God's way, then throw down and get it on.
yeah.
And that means clean out everything that reminds you or anyone else of Satan. I said, like that big 666 Hail Satan sign. You need that out of your house. You can't pray,
Yeah.
"Oh
Ah,
God, bless this sign,"
ah,
right? No, that needs to go.
right.
And he was he's still a traveling, rock singer and everything. And he said, "Man, it's just something people say." I said, "No, it's not just something people say. People say it, but it ain't just something."
Right.
Yeah.
And so I said, here's the deal, man. I may never see you again. I do care about you. And what's happening to that woman is tragic and it's demonic.
Yeah.
But you can't have me just come wave a wand over her. What you need to do is do things God's way. So that's the decision you need to make. The good news is, he said, "Man, I have to think about it." But I just heard that he did think about it. He had the friend that told me about it, went over and helped him clean out the house.
Mm.
And his girlfriend is recovering.
Wow.
And
Good.
a lot of times, I mean, we don't know how long fights go on.
Right.
Everybody loves the, a single punch knockout, but they're
Right.
not all that way. Sometimes, you just keep on praying and you see gradual improvement.
Yeah.
I don't really care as long as we get to the victory crown.
Yeah.
And so in her case, it's just she's being restored a little at a time.
Good.
That's awesome.
But
What happened with
anyway.
Deborah Joy when you found out about the internal fetish?
Oh yeah. So anyway, her hand kept hurting. I said, well, we asked God to help us. Maybe that's God. Let's go get an X-ray. Remember, they said, we are the seven. We have a secret. We are the seven.
Uh-huh.
We had a Christian doctor of the church, and I said, hey, after hours, can we come in and have you X-ray a hand and see if it has any fetishes in it? And he was part of the church, and so he knew about fetishes. He said, really? I said, that'd be interesting. We went in there, and he took a picture, and he said, wow, that's amazing. I said, what? We hadn't told him anything about the group. He said, there are 7 little tiny silver stars in the flesh of her hand.
Oh.
I said, really? I said, could you take them out? He said, yeah, that's what I do. He removed them, put them in a little container. We took them home, made a fire, and threw it in the fire. And when we threw them in the fire, instantly a swirl of smoke and fire went,
Whoa.
and and those demons went with it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Wow.
We never, it's not like we destroyed the fetish and then said, okay, now you have to leave. They left, man.
Their whole
And when the thing happened, she screamed and it was gone.
That's
Yeah.
But anyway, that's how fetishes work.
Wow.
But my point and your question is, we don't have to know everything because the
Yeah.
Spirit of the Almighty lives within us. And there are some things you don't need to know. And personally, I'm not curious to just know every little thing. I don't care what your uncle did to you. If we get past that,
Mhm.
I don't even want to know. I don't want to think about that. But if there's something God knows that we need to have you confess or pray through, then we'll trust God. So I would say it's nearly half and half. A lot of times God shows things. I'll tell you one more story. Cheryl was one of our pastors. She loved the Lord. Her husband pastored what we called the River Bottom Church, and she got sick, and she came in and told Cheryl. She said, I'm sick. I don't know what's wrong. I can't seem to get well. It's getting worse and worse, and I think it's demonic. A lot of things that don't make sense are demonic. Sometimes you think they make sense and they're demonic anyway, but there's just a lot of things. There's no reason for this, but it's happening. So anyway, Cheryl said, "We'll come in, let's pray." So she came in, and Cheryl and her sister Juanita, they're praying for this lady, and they pray that prayer, Lord, if there's anything that Renee has done inadvertently, that the enemy uh, has holds a secret against her that she doesn't know, reveal it to us. And Renee, she's sitting there, and um, she she's just getting prayer, right? She goes, Kachina. And Cheryl said,
Like,
what did you say? She said, I didn't say anything. She said, yeah, you did, Renee. You sneezed and said something. She said, I didn't sneeze or say anything. I'm just sitting there. Juanita said, Renee, you clearly just sneezed and said something. She said, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, obviously, we're into the realm of the spiritual, right? The woman didn't even know it happened. She just sat there. So they start praying again. She goes, Kachina. And Cheryl said, Renee, you said Kachina. Do you know what that means? I don't know what you're talking about. I did not say Kachina. So Cheryl just got a computer and started typing in Chiquina and tried to figure out how to spell it. And it said, you know, she got everything from an Italian name for the kitchen, and probably not. Anyway, one of them was a an Indian curse fetish doll that a certain tribe of Indians used to kill the settlers because of all that had happened to them with there was a lot of bad blood between Indians and settlers and the
Wow.
army. So anyway, Renee's husband was a Green Beret in the army, and I'll think of the Indian tribe in a minute, but it says they were famous for giving gifts that would kill you, and you'd
Oh,
never suspect it because it's just a little gift, and they called them kachinas. So anyway, when Cheryl found that out, she said, "Do you have any Indian artifacts or dolls or anything?" She said, "Oh yeah, Ronnie just brought me one from Taos, New Mexico." And uh, she said, "Well, could you go get it?" She said, "Well, it's just a cute little Indian doll." Cheryl said, "Yeah, could you go get it?" So she went and got it and brought the kachina back, and they burned it in the fire, and Renee was instantly healed
whoa.
because she was under the power of a curse, and the power of the curse is receiving it, which is why nobody should ever say, I am getting sick or I think I'm going to die. The
Uh-huh.
power, we're justified or condemned by our words.
Right.
But everything in the dark kingdom happens by consent. And so when she says, Oh, thank you very much, I'll take that.
Right.
She thinks she's taking an Indian doll. What she's taking is a death curse. And we all know that the enemy is the great deceiver. You don't have to know what you said yes to for it to impact you. And that
Right.
kind of thing happens a lot.
Right. Whoa.
That's crazy.
You mentioned your Holy Holocaust in October about burning different occult items and things. Um,
Instead of
did you want-
Halloween.
Yeah, well, you're obviously and I'm sure you've spoken on this before, but just for our listeners, for our viewers, what do Christians need to know about Halloween? You've had quite some interesting experiences for
Say,
sure.
some people
Yeah.
call it following and fall
Yeah.
in love with Jesus, or
Yeah. That
acting out.
all of that is called syncretism. You probably are familiar with the term,
Mhm.
but you can't take something evil and adorn it and make it better. You just have to call a spade a spade. Halloween, the actual contraction is Hollow Samhain. That's where we get the word. Worship the dread Lord of Death. That's the name of the holiday. So there's no fixing that up. You just got to remember that that is the highest calendar day in the year for Satan worship of every form, and it's every form. It's in the jungle, the islands. It's in South America, Macumba. It doesn't matter. All of those things. October 31st is the high day of black magic worldwide. In fact, I have you can go on our website and get one if you want, but I wrote a little brochure called Halloween, Hell of a Holiday. And it just tells the roots of Halloween and everything about Halloween. First of all, you don't, uh, you can be a complete moron and tell that the Halloween is evil because there is nothing redemptive about it. There's skulls, there's jack-o'-lanterns, which are the spirits of the dead. There's all of the masks are twisted, gnarly things, right? And all of those things are from Druid rituals. Every one of them are from Druid rituals. I'll give you an example. The trick or treat, you had to offer a gift to satisfy the Druids, or they would take your child for the Burning Man sacrifice. And so people put their very best out there, and the Druids, the ones that put out poor sacrifices, they would say that's not sufficient. We want one of your children, and they would put it in the straw man. The Burning Man in Nevada is a Druid celebration. That's why there's such perversion there. It's also why many people go missing every year during Burning Man. But anyway,
Heard that.
then they would tie human sacrifices in the Burning Man, sometimes called the Scarecrow,
Mhm.
and then light them on fire and do a holocaust, a burnt sacrifice to Samhain. But they were so demented and demonized that they would mockingly give you a chance to save yourself if you could bob for apples. They'd tie your hands behind your back, and they'd have a boiling cauldron of boiling oil, and then put apples in there. If you could get one out with your teeth, then you didn't have to face the Burning Man sacrifice. But most people just died trying and were burnt anyway. But even if you lived, your face would just be, that's why there's all the melted face masks at Halloween. It's from the Burning Man, the bobbing for apples ceremony, and everything else that you've ever heard associated with Halloween is from Druid Satan worship. They worship the dread Lord of Death, Samhain, which is why the festival is called Hallow or Worship Samhain, Halloween. They used to say Soween, but that's just we by spelling we pronounce the H. They don't. So for them it's SOW apostrophe EIN, Soween. So Halloween became Halloween, and and amazing to me that millions of Christians honor the dread Lord of Death. Everything is about death. Zombies and people put up, gravestones in their yard, and it's a very, very dark holiday. But if you go to churchofgladtidings.com, there's a pamphlet that you could order. And again, it's called Halloween, Hell of a Holiday. And it has quotes in there from Anton LaVey, who, Luciferian Satanists mock the Western church all the time for being so stupid. But he said, at least the Christians worship with us on our holy day, Halloween. They all participate. And by the way, when you become an exorcist and start helping a lot of people, the amount of really dark, grisly demonization that happens on Halloween is over the top.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of even an example of like you've seen from that kind of demonization, participation in Halloween?
An example of things that happen on Halloween?
Yeah, or
Is that
what
what
you
you're
said, the
saying?
amount of demonization you've seen from participating with Halloween. Can you give us an example for our viewers?
Yeah, well, okay. So there's a guy uh, named Bill. Hang on a second. I got so many names in my head. I'll think of it in a minute. But there's a book um, that is called Wicca, the Satan's Little White Lie. And the guy's name is William Schnobelen.
Oh, Stilblin. Yeah, Bill Stilblin.
Yep. And he wrote that. He also wrote a book uh, that exposes his life story. It's what's the name of that book? It's anyway, it's testimony. I'll probably think of it as we go. But Schnobelen said when he was a boy on Halloween, he got demonized.
Yeah.
And that's his testimony, that he was always drawn toward evil. And he saw um, a whole cloud of bats that came up, and he they they weren't normal bats. Of course, I wasn't there, but anyway, they were
Right.
looking at him and then came into him, and it drew him toward the love of evil. Of course, he became a satanic high priest. He became a vampire high priest and did a lot of stuff. And
Uh,
that he wrote his book. It's called Lucifer Dethroned.
oh,
That's the testimony of William Schnobel. But anyway, there are many, many, many testimonies like that. But if you talk to anybody that's come out of um, the occult realm, that's the high day of blood sacrifice worldwide. And that's why Ray had been through the six of the seven rituals of defilement, always on a Halloween. And she was scheduled to be the bride of Satan on Halloween. That's when Anton died. Why did he wait for that? Because it was the time of the greatest empowerment of evil worldwide. And by the way, the second greatest expression of evil in the world is Mayday. That's why it's become a code call for the military if something's going very, very wrong, right?
oh,
They don't say June 1st, June 1st, right? They say, Mayday, Mayday.
That is
Well,
interesting.
that's where it comes from, great evil, and particularly if ships are burning, because those are the 13 days of us fire sacrifices to Satan, and Mayday is the culmination of all that. So that's also where the mothers of darkness come from. These horror stories that have a nun that is totally demonized.
oh,
That goes back to Mayday and the original demonization of a Catholic nun. Um, uh, Her name was something. I'll think of it here in a minute. But anyway,
yeah.
it was over. There's a place called the Portal of Hell. I've stood over and looked into it. It's just a shaft that goes down apparently forever. If you throw something in it, you never hear it hit. It just goes down into the heart of the earth. And they call that the gate of hell. Of course, there's one in Caesarea Philippi in the Holy Land, but these are portals that go into the heart of the earth. And so, and in Germany, of course, Heidelberg is known for beer. What people don't know is everybody stayed drunk because of the evil things that happened around Heidelberg. But anyway, the gate of hell is right facing Heidelberg Castle, and there was uh, there were a bunch of um, priests that found out about it. They went and they built a Catholic monastery, and they designated themselves as the guardians of the gate of hell. Anyway, there was a nun that came and said God had told her to come and close the gate of hell, and they said you're foolish and you're prideful. That this is way above your pay grade. Anyway, she went out there on May 1st, and they uh, what's something's notch. I should remember her name, but anyway, it's a big old German name. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's May Day is called in Germany the night of this nun. It's her name, and Notch
Oh,
is night. Um, but anyway, she was demonized. They said beyond repair, and she became the first mother of darkness, which you may have heard of them. But anyway, lots of funky stuff happened on holidays, and the the sad thing, we started this broadcast talking about the sad thing is the average Western Christian
Yeah.
is completely clueless, and
Yeah.
they sell themselves into all kinds of evil. They sell their children into all kinds of evil. I don't know if you do this, but the movie The Exorcist, which it's just, it's a gross depiction of evil. I don't recommend people watch it, but I do tell people it is a true story. The Exorcist is not a contrived story. It's a story that they changed. They took artistic artists with some of the things, but
Yeah.
it was a 12-year-old boy. It wasn't a girl. It was a 12-year-old boy. His father was in the military. His father bought him a Ouija board at a toy store because he thought it was a toy. And that child all a Ouija board is
Yeah.
is
So divination
is
board, right?
a tool to open doors into the spirit world and to welcome spirits. Well, spirits go from imps and sprites and stuff to fallen gods. I mean, they're all different
Yeah.
powers. And anyway, so if you're there with a welcome in sign, it just happens. Who knows? Even
Who knows what shows up?
most witches will tell you stay away from a Ouija board because you're just saying,
Heard that.
"Come on in, whoever you are." Well, even witches know there are extremely powerful, malevolent spirits, and if you grant them access, apart from a work of God's grace, the party's over. And so, anyway, that's what happened. But that's what's happened to our society. Why would Warner Brothers and do these demonic type of movies, and why would toy stores sell these things that even witches say don't do that? And it just shows what's happened to our society. And I just heard on the news, they don't seem to understand why, but they're saying that for some reason, Halloween sales are approaching Christmas sales for the greatest holiday in the world in terms of sales. Well, I know the whole world lies within the power of the wicked one. And Christmas is about Christ. And Halloween is about worshiping the dread Lord of Death. So there's a lot of moxie behind promoting that.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah. So we'll dive deeper into some of this stuff another
Yes.
time. But thank you so much for your time, Pastor Dave.
Oh, you're welcome. And
Been a
really
pleasure
great to
and an
talk
honor.
to you. God bless you guys.
So,
Yeah, call back. We can talk again sometime. And but anyway, love you. Keep the faith. These are exciting times,
indeed.
and hope to see you in person soon, sometime. You're
That
there
would
in
be
the air,
awesome.
right?
Yes.
That would be
Yes.
awesome.
All right.
We
God
want-
bless you guys. Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Pastor Dave. Take care.
Thanks.
You're welcome. God bless you. Bye bye.
Bye.